Hey there, it's Bogdan, author of Skill Success and Self-Mastery and founder of Potentia, and welcome back to module number 4 of this program, talking about some of the mindsets of the world's highest performing and highest achieving individuals. Let's get straight into it with the 4th mindset, which is that high achievers are far more productive and able to eliminate distractions and improve their focus. Essentially, they place a much higher priority on their productivity. They manage their time differently. They kind of have a different relationship with time. That's what we're gonna explore in this video, each one of these modules here. It's a quick one in this mini course designed to give you one mindset and a couple of strategies for how you can add it into your life and really embody it to create that next level of results across one or pretty much all areas of your life. So let's get into productivity here, because this is another big topic. In fact, if you're watching this 4th module here, I'm sure at some point in your life, you've had these kind of thoughts. You've wished that, hey, I wish I could be more productive. I wish I could get more done. I wish that I was able to manage I wish I had more time. These are a lot of questions that come up, and I've answered to a lot of people and seen come up quite often here, which is why I'm bringing it back up in this training program, because there's a big difference between how most people manage their time, manage their productivity, manage their work, for example, and how the world's highest performers, highest achievers do it. So I'm going to cover this mindset here and 4 strategies in this module, 4th module. I'm going to give you 4 strategies for how you can improve your productivity, improve your time management, and get more done to achieve your goals faster. Sound good? Awesome. Let's get into it. This mindset shift. The reason this is important is because we live in a very distracted world. We live in a world in which there's so much distraction, so much information, so many things going on right now that if someone, for example, just picks up their phone in the morning, they could spend hours on that thing because there's always new messages coming in, notifications coming in, there's new tasks, new things to do, and so on, requests on their time. There's so much distraction, so much overwhelm, and unless we have a plan for our productivity, chances are we get caught up in that. A lot of people get kind of caught up in the reactiveness of life, and they're reacting over here and reacting over here, and they're constantly chasing this and that. Yet at the end of the day, for example, or at the end of the work week, they haven't moved any of their important priorities forward. They haven't made time for them. They haven't done it. Then they spend the whole day, for example, at the office, and they've worked really hard and they were really, really busy, but they weren't productive. They didn't move those priorities forward. That's what happens unless we prioritize this. So that's why productivity and time management becomes, at least in my belief, more and more important basically every single day as technology and the amount of information that's available and that we consume keeps rising. This becomes more and more important, more and more critical for us to master. So now let's get into 4 specific strategies. First one here, clarity. Now, I know I already talked about this back in module number 1, the importance of clarity, but here's how this connects with productivity. Productivity isn't actually possible for you to be consciously productive without first having clarity. A lot of people, they wake up in the morning and they're like, what do I do? Like, what am I going to do today? And the challenge is that this is often the wrong question to ask, and this basically leads us to follow low value priorities. Like if you go into, for example, work, and you go into the office and you say, okay, what do I do today? That's the wrong question. That may lead you to start doing things that aren't really important. They're not high value, high priority tasks that will really move the needle for your career, for example, your business, your life. The better question to ask yourself is, what do I want? Like, what do I want? And then work back from there. Because if you ask yourself, like, what do I want? Let's talk about in the professional realm. What do I want? Let's say I want to grow my business. Or let's say I want to get better results, for example, for this client or for myself and so on. If you have that intention, now you can reverse engineer that and you can be like, okay, what do I do? What should I start with today, this morning, this day? What should I start with in order to achieve that? Like, you no longer get swayed by low value priorities because you have clarity and you start with the right question. And so next time, let's say Monday morning, don't ask yourself, what do I do today? Ask yourself, what do I want? and then reverse engineer from that. Second question, ask yourself, what will help me get to where I want to go, for example? And now you have a more aligned path. So that's the first strategy. Change that question, change that languaging, get clarity, set some goals, because if you don't have goals, you don't have a direction that you're going towards, and it's hard for you to be productive because productivity is basically going towards some direction. So that's the first one. Second one is setting a clear plan of action. It's shocking to me. I know this is incredibly basic, but it continues to shock me because I work with, for example, a lot of customers and clients and have done. And it shocks me how many people, they have a goal, but again, they don't have a plan of action. I've covered this a little bit in the past few modules, but I want to really dive deep into this here because that's what makes productivity also possible. When we have that plan of action, when we actually break down our goals. Most people, the reason I'll go out kind of on a limb and say that the biggest reason people get distracted isn't because they don't know what to do. They have goals, they know what they should be doing. But because those things are unclear and they're fuzzy, the mind kind of subconsciously gravitates towards things that are clear, that are visible, that aren't blurry and fuzzy in our mind. And so we get distracted and we go on social media and we spend time here and we talk to people and we do a whole bunch of different stuff instead of doing the things that we know we should be doing. I hope you can kind of relate to this. Instead of doing the things that we should be doing, because those things kind of appear fuzzy, and so we don't have kind of the pull to do those things. And the key here is to clarify those things. Again, a lot of people, they push goals back because they simply haven't stopped to plan and prepare. Like, ask yourself, what are you going to do tomorrow morning, let's say? What are you going to do? Do you have a plan for what you're going to do? Do you have a plan? Have you looked at, for example, your long-term goals, broken that down, and then out of that, come up with a plan for what you're going to do tomorrow? Do you have clear priorities for what you're going to do tomorrow, or are you just going to wing it and hope that you're going to be productive and you're going to move the needle on your goals, you're going to achieve the results you want? And so the first strategy here becomes super clear on what you want, because that will give you a direction. It's very hard to be consciously productive without first having clarity, knowing what you want. Don't ask, like, what am I going to do today? Ask, what do I want? Work from there. Second one, don't just do that. Break it down. Break down your goals into, okay, what are you going to do this week? What are you going to get done by today? Basic project planning. I know it's basic, but a lot of people don't do it, which leads to poor productivity, poor time management, and so on. So that's the second strategy there. Now, third one, very big one, very important one, which is about saying no. A lot of people, we kind of growing up, we get told that the word no is bad, that saying no to things, that we're wasting opportunities, that we're not being respectful of other people making requests on our time and so on, that saying no is bad. And so what this creates nowadays is that a lot of people, they just say yes just for the sake of saying yes. They never say no. Like, someone makes a request on their time, some opportunity comes on, and they just say yes to everything. And they say yes to all to-dos and it's yes to all distractions, because they haven't kind of mastered this art, if you will, of saying no, when in fact it's one of the best and most important things for productivity. I'd argue that it's one of the most important words in the English vocabulary and dictionary for productivity. Being able to say no, saying no more often. And a great example of this was when Bill Gates and Warren Buffett first met. Bill Gates' mother, who was the host, they met for dinner. They asked the people going around the table, asked them, like, what's the key to your success? And both Bill Gates and Warren Buffett, they both answered focus. Focus was the key to their success. And Warren Buffett also has some amazing quotes about the word no specifically. For example, one of them being, like he said in an interview later on, he said, for every 100 great opportunities brought to me, I say no 99 times, because he understands the importance of focus and how saying no to more things, kind of going on like this no train, this no track, and being like, okay, then what am I going to cut out? What am I going to say no to? Like, really, if you're watching this video, if you're watching this module here, like, look at your to-do list, look at your goals list. What can you say no to, like, right now that will free up time? A lot of people, they say, oh, I wish I had more time, or I wish that there was more hours in the day, but they could make more hours, they could basically create more time by just saying no to more things that aren't truly important to them. Like cutting out a lot of the distractions, cutting out low value, let's say in the workplace, low value priorities. A lot of time spent on email, a lot of time spent on communication and so on, that isn't, for example, necessary and doesn't really move the needle forward. So getting better at saying no, getting better at saying no to low value priorities, to distractions, to anything that's gonna hold you back, that's gonna stop you, that's gonna sabotage your productivity and your results. Getting better at that. And it's a trainable skill. I'll add that bit as well. It's a trainable skill. It's something that you can develop. It's a little uncomfortable at first, but you can get better at it. At first, when you say no, like someone like make a request on your time, for example, and you say no, it can come across and you may feel a little guilty and so on. But that will ease because you know that you're doing yourself and you're doing them, for example, a service by saying no on something that's a very long shot or isn't the best possibility or isn't the best collaboration and so on. Plus, it helps you be more value to yourself, to your clients, to your company, whatever your situation is, when you're focused on what your priorities really are. So that's the third strategy here. Get better at saying no and start this right now. Like you can go to your to-do list and you can cut some stuff, make some time for higher value priorities. And then strategy number 4 is something that I call focus blocks. So when it comes to, for example, working, there's a lot of amazing studies around this that have been conducted. And they found that, for example, when someone's multitasking, as in doing 2 things at once, it's kind of like their IQ drops around 10%. One particular study showed that. And the most shocking part of that study, and this is my favorite part, which is that same study, they found that when people were, for example, on drugs, they were high and they were kind of baked out of their mind, their IQ only dropped about 5%. Which means that when most people are multitasking, which unfortunately is what most people do in the workplace, they're constantly going between multiple things instead of actually being focused on one or a particular task or project. It's kind of like they're high, they're working in such an, for example, ineffective or inefficient way. The key here is to be able to focus, is to be able to not multitask. One of the most shocking things I see is that some people, for example, in office buildings, or I've heard of, is that some people will sit down and they'll have their laptop and they'll have their phone like right in between, for example, the keyboard and the laptop or the computer. And they'll have their phone there and they'll work for like 1 or 2 minutes and then they'll go back to the phone and check some social media notification and so on. Or while they're working, they've got their phone open or notifications or Facebook and stuff like that open. And so every basically 60 or 90 seconds and so on, they're getting distracted and their attention is going back. And what science shows and research now shows is that your mind kind of has a little bit of time to readjust. So every time you get distracted, it's not just that you got distracted, it's also the fact that now your brain has to refocus, kind of get back into the zone, get into that flow state, which can be a whole separate discussion within itself. I'll link to some stuff below. But it takes a lot of time to refocus. And so what are focus blocks? Well, it's something that has worked for me and it's been incredibly beneficial for me. It's how I, for example, write my books or script courses and things like that. Something I've shared with clients as well and has helped them skyrocket their productivity. It's sitting down for example, starting with 25 minutes. This was the Pomodoro method. It became very popular in, for example, college kids to study for exams. They would do this. They would set an egg timer for 25 minutes and they would just focus on one thing for 25 minutes and they'd work until that egg timer finished. Or you can extend it later on to, for example, an hour or 90 minutes and you just sit down and you set a timer and you just work on one thing. And during that time, no phone, no social media, no this. And by doing this, you train your ability to focus and you can get so much more done than when you're constantly switching between the laptop and social media and conversations and this and that. Like when you're constantly switching, you're being incredibly inefficient in, for example, your productivity, your task management, and so on. And so go out there, test this. Like start with 25 minutes and just focus on one thing. If you're doing this for the first time, it becomes a little harder and people find that it's harder than they initially anticipated. But over time, you'll actually get better at this and you'll see incredible boosts in your productivity. And so those are 4 strategies for you. Again, one of the big differences between high achievers, high performers, and other individuals is how productive they are. As in, if someone goes into an office, for example, for 8 hours, how much actual work do they do? Unfortunately, for some people, they do very little because a lot of time is spent on distraction, social media, interruption, and so on, that they're not actually moving the needle on the important priorities in their life. Compared to high achievers high achievers are highly productive and eliminate and avoid distractions. They're focused. That's the mindset. Those are some strategies for you to adopt. So I hope this 4th module here was useful, was helpful for you. Again, put this into practice, and I'll see you in the 5th and last module of this program.